It was a quiet evening in the small town of Blackwater Gulch, where the sun dipped below the horizon like a weary traveler ready to rest. The sky painted itself in hues of orange and purple as the day surrendered to night. In this desolate corner of the Wild West, where dust storms were more common than rain, and tumbleweeds rolled through empty streets, there lived a young woman named Clara. Clara had always been an oddity in Blackwater Gulch. She wasn't like the other women, who spent their days sewing quilts or gossiping by the well. No! Clara preferred solitude, often wandering far from town with only her thoughts for company. Her neighbors whispered about her strange habits, calling her names behind closed doors. Crazy, unpredictable, even witch. But little did they know, Clara carried secrets buried deep within her soul. Secrets that would soon shake the very foundation of their peaceful existence. One crisp morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the cracks in her cabin's wooden walls, Clara woke with a heavy heart. Something felt wrong, a feeling she couldn't quite put into words. It started as a faint unease, but it grew stronger with each passing moment. She stepped outside, squinting against the glare of the rising sun, and took in familiar sight of the ranch stretching before her. Rolling fields of dry grass stretched endlessly toward the horizon, interrupted only by the occasional cluster of sagebrush and mesquite trees. Farther still lay the canyon, a jagged scar carved into the earth, its depths shrouded in mystery. The family horse, Old Sam, stood lazily near the water trough, his ears twitching at the sound of her approach. Clara patted his neck absent-mindedly, lost in thought. "Something's not right," she murmured to herself, though Old Sam seemed unconcerned. He nickered softly, as if to reassure her, then turned back to sipping water. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling. It gnawed at her, growing louder until it became unbearable. Against her better judgment, she decided to investigate. Mounting Old Sam, she rode out beyond the boundaries of the ranch, deeper into the wilderness than she'd ever dared go before. The air grew cooler as she ventured farther, and the landscape changed subtly. Less grass, more rocks jutting up like broken teeth from the ground. As she neared the edge of the canyon, a chill ran down her spine. There was something unnatural about the place, something hidden beneath the surface. She dismounted, tying Old Sam to a nearby tree, and approached cautiously. Peering over the edge, she saw nothing but shadows and darkness swirling in the abyss below. Yet, despite the lack of visible danger, she could feel it, the presence of something watching her. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling slightly. Silence answered her, save for the distant call of a hawk circling high above. Still, she refused to leave. Something compelled her to stay, to uncover whatever truth lay hidden here. Back in Blackwater Gulch, life continued as usual, or so it seemed. The townsfolk went about their business, unaware of the turmoil brewing just beyond their reach. At the general store, Mr. Jenkins stacked shelves while exchanging pleasantries with Mrs. Harper, who was purchasing flour for her baking. Over the saloon, men gathered around card tables, their laughter echoing into the street. No one noticed when Clara disappeared. No one cared enough to ask questions. Days passed, and the unease Clara had felt began to spread among the townsfolk. Strange things started happening, things that defied explanation. Crops failed without reason. Animals grew restless and skittish, and whispers of ghostly figures haunting the canyon reached everyone's ears. Some dismissed these tales as superstition, but others weren't so sure. It was during one such night, under a sky glittering with stars, that Sheriff Hayes found himself drawn to the canyon's edge. He hadn't intended to go there, not after hearing the stories, but something pulled him inexorably forward. As he stood gazing into the chasm, he felt a cold wind brush against his face, carrying with it the faint scent of decay. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. Turning quickly, he spotted Old Sam standing nearby, his mane blowing wildly in the wind. The horse looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes, then began walking slowly toward the canyon's edge. Confused, Sheriff Hayes followed, calling out to the animal. But Old Sam didn't stop. Instead, he dragged the sheriff closer and closer to the precipice, until finally, with a great effort, the lawman grabbed hold of the reins and pulled hard. "What is this all about?" Sheriff Hayes demanded, his voice gruff with frustration. But Old Sam remained silent, staring unblinkingly into the canyon. And then, as if on cue, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble echoed through the valley, growing louder with every passing second. Rocks tumbled loose from the canyon walls, crashing down into the depths below. Dust filled the air, making it difficult to breathe. Through the chaos, Sheriff Hayes caught sight of something, or rather, someone emerging from the shadows. Clara stumbled forward, her clothes torn and dirt-streaked, her hair wild and untamed. Her eyes glowed with a fierce intensity, as though she had witnessed horrors no mortal should endure. "You have to listen to me," she cried, her voice barely audible over the roar of the earthquake. "It's real. Everything I've been trying to tell you, it's all true." Sheriff Hayes stared at her, disbelief written plainly across his face. "What are you talking about, girl? What's real?" But before Clara could answer, the ground gave way completely, sending both of them tumbling toward the canyon floor. Time seemed to slow as they fell, the world around them dissolving into a blur of color and sound. Just when all hope seemed lost, strong arms wrapped around Clara, pulling her to safety. She opened her eyes to find herself cradled in the embrace of an unfamiliar man, his features obscured by shadow. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said, his voice smooth yet commanding. "This place has been waiting for you." Confusion clouded Clara's mind as she struggled to make sense of what was happening. Who was this man? And why did he seem to know so much about her? Before she could ask, however, another figure emerged from the darkness, a woman dressed in flowing white robes, her face serene yet sorrowful. "The prophecy is fulfilled," the woman intoned, her voice carrying an otherworldly quality. "The chosen one has arrived." Clara shook her head violently, refusing to believe what she was hearing. "I'm not special. I'm just me." "But you're also the key," the man interjected, his tone softening. "Without you, none of us can escape this curse." "Curse? Escape?" Clara wanted answers, but the moment slipped away as quickly as it had come. The ground stabilized and light returned to the canyon, revealing a hidden city nestled within its depths. Buildings made of golden stone rose majestically, their intricate carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. People moved about, their faces etched with a mix of awe and fear. Among them was Sheriff Hayes, looking utterly bewildered. "What in tarnation is going on here?" he demanded, his usual authority faltering in the face of such strangeness. "It's a long story," Clara replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion, "and I don't think we'll believe it until we see it ourselves." Little did they know, the revelations were only beginning. Hidden truths awaited them, buried beneath layers of myth and legend, secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about the Wild West and about themselves. As the dust settled and the initial shock wore off, Clara found herself standing amidst a crowd of strangers, all staring at her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The Golden City, though breathtaking, seemed almost unreal, as if it were a mirage conjured by the desert sun. Yet here she was, surrounded by people who claimed to have waited centuries for her arrival. The woman in white approached Clara, her movements graceful and deliberate. "My name is Alara," she said, her voice carrying a soothing melody. "And you, Clara, are the one we've been waiting for, the bridge between our world and yours." Clara's heart raced. "I don't understand. What do you mean? Why me?" Alara placed a gentle hand on Clara's shoulder. "You carry within you a power that has been dormant for generations, a power that can break the curse that binds us to this place." Sheriff Hayes, still reeling from the events, stepped forward. "Curse? Break? You're talking nonsense, lady. This town, this canyon, it's just land. How can it be cursed?" The man who had saved Clara from the fall stepped forward now, his presence commanding attention. "The curse is real, Sheriff. For over 200 years, our people have been trapped here, unable to leave the canyon. We exist in a limbo, neither fully alive nor dead, and only Clara can set us free." Clara felt her knees weaken. "But I'm just a rancher's daughter. I don't know anything about curses or powers." Alara smiled softly. "Sometimes, the ones who seem the least likely are chosen for the greatest tasks. Your ancestors were part of this city. Clara, they left behind a legacy that you must now fulfill." As the words sank in, Clara's mind raced back to stories her grandmother used to tell Tales of a lost city hidden in the canyon, of a people who vanished without a trace. She had always dismissed them as mere folklore, but now they seemed eerily relevant. The sheriff, ever the skeptic, crossed his arms. Even if I believe this wild tale, and that's a big... What does any of this have to do with Blackwater Gulch? Why should we care about your so-called curse? The curse affects more than just us, the man replied, his voice taking on a somber tone. It bleeds into your world, poisoning the land and the people who live on it. That's why your crops fail, why your animals grow restless. It's why Clara felt compelled to come here. The canyon is calling to her, just as it called to her ancestors before her. Clara looked around at the faces of the people gathered around her. Some appeared hopeful, others fearful, and a few downright hostile. One man, older and grizzled, spat on the ground. We've heard these promises before. Every generation, someone claims to be the chosen one, but nothing ever changes. Why should we believe her? Clara's hands balled into fists. I don't want to be believed. I just want answers. If what you say is true, if my family has ties to this place, then why did they leave? Why didn't they stay and help you? Hilaire's expression softened. Because they couldn't. The curse ensures that those who leave cannot return. Once outside the canyon, the memory of this place fades, replaced by doubt and disbelief. Only a select few retain fragments of the truth, enough to pass down stories and legends. Clara's chest tightened. So everything my grandmother told me, it wasn't just a story? No, Hilaire confirmed. It was a warning, a reminder of the responsibility that would one day fall to you. The weight of that responsibility bore down on Clara like a physical force. She glanced at Sheriff Hayes, seeking some form of reassurance, but he merely shrugged. Looks like you're stuck with this kid, whether you like it or not. Night fell over the canyon, casting long shadows across the Golden City. Clara sat alone on a stone bench, her thoughts swirling like the wind through the valley. Old Sam stood nearby, his presence a comforting constant in the midst of chaos. She reached out to stroke his mane, finding solace in his steady gaze. You never abandoned me, did you? She whispered. Even when I doubted myself, you stayed by my side. As if understanding her words, old Sam nudged her hand gently. Clara smiled faintly, though tears threatened to spill from her eyes. She missed the simplicity of her life before, waking up to the sound of birdsong, tending to fields, riding through the open range. Now, everything had changed. Her world had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined, but at what cost? A soft rustle broke the silence, and Clara turned to see Hilaire approaching. The woman's robe shimmered faintly in the moonlight, giving her an almost ethereal appearance. Still wrestling with doubt, I see, Hilaire remarked, sitting beside Clara. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, Clara admitted. How can I possibly fix something that's been broken for so long? Readiness is not always a prerequisite for greatness, Hilaire replied. Sometimes courage is enough. Clara sighed. Courage feels like such a small thing compared to everything else. But it's the foundation upon which all else is built. Without courage, even the strongest powers remain dormant. Clara mulled over the words, searching for some glimmer of hope. What happens if I fail? Hilaire paused, choosing her next words carefully. Failure is not an option. If the curse remains unbroken, the consequences will ripple outward, affecting both worlds. The canyon will collapse entirely, burying us all beneath its ruins. And your town, it will succumb to the same fate. The gravity of the situation hit Clara, like a punch to the gut. She had thought only of herself, of her own fears and doubts, but now she saw the bigger picture. Lives depended on her, not just hers, but countless others she had never met. I won't let that happen, she declared, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Tell me what I need to do. Hilaire nodded approvingly. First, you must embrace the power within you. It sleeps deep in your bloodline, waiting to awaken. Then, you must confront the source of the curse, the entity that feeds on fear and despair. Clara's stomach churned at the mention of an entity. An entity? Like a monster? In a way, yes. But it is not a creature of flesh and bone. It is a manifestation of the collective pain and suffering endured by our people over centuries. To defeat it, you must face not only it, but also your own inner demons. The task ahead seemed insurmountable, but Clara resolved to try. Where do I start? Tomorrow, Ilara promised. For now, rest. You'll need your strength. Dawn broke over the canyon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Clara rose early, her resolve hardened after a night of restless contemplation. The people of the Golden City watched her with a mix of admiration and trepidation as she prepared for the journey ahead. Sheriff Hayes joined her, his hat pulled low over his eyes. You really think you can pull this off? I have to, Clara replied. There's no other choice. The sheriff chuckled darkly. That's the spirit. Just remember, kid, if things go south, I ain't sticking around to watch the fireworks. Clara smirked. Wouldn't expect anything less from you, Sheriff. Together, they ventured deeper into the canyon, following Ilara's guidance toward the heart of the curse. The landscape grew increasingly surreal, with towering rock formations resembling ancient statues and streams of water that glowed faintly blue. Each step brought them closer to the unknown, and with it, the promise of revelation or ruin. Little did they know, the entity awaited them, its hunger growing stronger with every passing moment. And when the time came, Clara would face not only the darkness outside, but also the darkness within herself. The deeper Clara and Sheriff Hayes ventured into the canyon, the more surreal the surroundings became. The air grew heavier, carrying with it a faint metallic tang that made Clara's nose wrinkle in discomfort. Strange whispers echoed around them, though there was no one in sight, only jagged rocks and shadowy crevices that seemed to stretch endlessly. Did you hear that? Clara asked, stopping abruptly as another whisper floated past her ears. It sounded almost like laughter, but twisted, unnatural. Hear what? The sheriff replied, his hand instinctively moving toward the holster at his hip. Kid, I think your imagination's running wild. Clara shook her head. No, it's real. There's something out here watching us. Before the sheriff could respond, old Sam let out a low whinny, his ears twitching nervously. He stomped his hooves against the rocky ground, clearly agitated. Even the horse knew something was wrong. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble slightly. Rocks tumbled from above, clattering onto the path ahead. Clara grabbed hold of a nearby boulder for balance while the sheriff steadied himself with one hand on his gun belt. What now? He muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the area warily. As if answering his question, the shadows around them shifted unnaturally. They coiled together like smoke, forming shapes that danced just beyond the edge of clarity. Clara felt her heart race as she watched these forms twist and writhe, seemingly alive. Then, without warning, one of the shadows detached itself completely, stretching upward until it stood taller than any man. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its body was hunched, its limbs elongated and spindly, and its face, well, Clara couldn't make out much except for two glowing red eyes that burned with otherworldly intensity. A low growl rumbled from its throat, vibrating through the canyon walls. Sheriff Hayes drew his revolver instinctively, aiming directly at the creature. Stay back. Whatever you are, he barked, his voice steady despite the fear tightening his chest. But the thing didn't flinch. Instead, it lunged forward with alarming speed, forcing both Clara and the sheriff to dive out of the way. Old Sam reared up, neighing loudly, nearly throwing Clara off balance as she scrambled to keep him calm. Run, the sheriff shouted, already sprinting down the narrow trail. Clara hesitated only briefly before following suit, dragging old Sam along behind her. The horse resisted at first, his instincts telling him to flee, but Clara urged him onward with soothing words and gentle tugs on the reins. Behind them, the creature pursued relentlessly, its movements fluid yet monstrous. The sound of its clawed feet scraping against stone filled the air, sending shivers down Clara's spine. She glanced over her shoulder just in time to see it leap high into the air, narrowly missing the sheriff's head as he ducked beneath a low-hanging rock formation. This way, Clara called, spotting a narrow fissure in the canyon wall. Without hesitation, she guided old Sam inside, hoping the tight space might deter their pursuer. The sheriff followed close behind, his breathing labored but determined. For a moment, it worked. The creature hesitated at the entrance, its massive form too large to fit through the gap. But then, with a deafening roar, it raised its arms and slammed them against the rock face, sending shards flying everywhere. Dust choked the air as the fissure began to crumble. "We need to move faster," Clara yelled, urging old Sam further into the darkness. The tunnel twisted unpredictably, forcing them to navigate carefully lest they become trapped or injured. Still, every step brought them closer to safety, or so they hoped. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the passage opened up into a cavernous chamber lit dimly by bioluminescent fungi growing along the walls. The light cast eerie green hues across the room, illuminating strange carvings etched into the stone. Symbols spiraled outward in intricate patterns, some resembling animals, others abstract designs impossible to decipher. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested an object wrapped in cloth. Clara approached cautiously, her curiosity outweighing her caution for the moment. As she reached out to touch the bundle, the sheriff grabbed her arm. "Wait," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know what that is." "I think we're supposed to find it," Clara replied softly, glancing back at the entrance where the creature continued to claw at the rock face. Time was running out. Unwrapping the cloth revealed a small, ornate box carved from what appeared to be solid gold. Intricate engravings covered its surface, pulsing faintly with a soft blue glow. Clara ran her fingers over the markings, feeling an odd warmth emanating from the artifact. "Do you feel that?" she asked, looking up at the sheriff. "Yeah," he admitted grudgingly. "Feels live." Before either of them could react further, the ground beneath the pedestal gave way suddenly, dropping them into an even deeper chamber below. This new space was larger, its ceiling lost in darkness overhead. In the distance, they could hear the faint sound of rushing water, a river flowing somewhere unseen. And standing amidst the chaos was Alara, her white robes glowing faintly in the dim light. Behind her loomed the entity they had encountered earlier, its presence more menacing now that it had cornered them. "You've done well to reach this point," Alara said calmly, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "But the true test lies ahead." "The entity?" Clara guessed, clutching the golden box tightly. Alara nodded. "It feeds on fear and doubt. To defeat it, you must confront not only it, but also the fears within yourself." Fear gripped Clara's chest as she realized the magnitude of what lay ahead. Facing external threats was one thing. Battling her own insecurities and failures? That was another matter entirely. The entity advanced slowly, its glowing red eyes locking onto Clara. For a moment, everything else faded away. The sheriff, Alara, even old Sam, as Clara stared into those infernal depths. Memories flooded her mind. Times she had failed, moments she had doubted herself, instances where she had let others down. Each memory fueled the creature's power, making it stronger, more terrifying. But then, amidst the torrent of negativity, Clara remembered something else. Hope. Hope for her family, for Blackwater Gulch, for the people of the Golden City who trusted her to save them. And with that hope came courage. Summoning all her strength, Clara stepped forward, raising the golden box between herself and the entity. The artifact pulsed brighter in response, its glow intensifying until it drove back the shadows surrounding them. "You can't win," Clara declared, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I won't let you." The entity roared in defiance, lashing out with claws that scraped harmlessly against a protective barrier formed by the artifact. Slowly but surely, Clara channeled her resolve into the box, feeding it her determination and willpower. The entity's form began to waver, its outline blurring as its power diminished. "No!" it shrieked, its voice echoing throughout the chamber. "You cannot destroy me." But destroy it, Clara did. With one final burst of energy, the artifact unleashed a blinding light that consumed the entity entirely, leaving behind only silence and ash. Exhausted, Clara collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, the sheriff knelt as well, his hat pulled low over his eyes. Neither spoke for several long moments, each processing the enormity of what had transpired. When Clara finally looked up, she saw Alara smiling warmly at her. "Well done," the woman said simply. "The curse is broken." Around them, the cavern began to shift. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and renewal. Light streamed in from unseen sources, bathing the chamber in golden hues. And outside, Clara could hear the sounds of life returning to the canyon. Birds singing, streams babbling, wind rustling through leaves. It was over. The curse was gone, and with it, the weight that had burdened Clara since the beginning of her journey. Yet, as she rose to her feet, she knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would forever carry the lessons learned here in the heart of the Wild West. As the golden light filled the cavern, Clara felt a warmth spread through her body, as if the very air itself was embracing her. The oppressive weight that had pressed down on her chest since stepping into the canyon lifted, replaced by a sense of liberation she hadn't known she needed. Around her, the once shadowy walls of the chamber seemed to glow with life, their surfaces now adorned with vibrant colors and intricate patterns that pulsed gently. Elara approached Clara, her white robe shimmering like sunlight on water. "You've done it," she said softly, her voice carrying both pride and relief. "The curse is broken and the balance has been restored." Clara stood slowly, her legs still trembling from the effort of confronting the entity. She looked at the golden box in her hands, its surface now cool to the touch but no less extraordinary. "Is this over?" she asked hesitantly, glancing around at the transformed space. "It is," Elara confirmed. "But remember, Clara, breaking the curse was only the beginning. Your journey doesn't end here. This artifact you hold, it holds more power than you might realize. It's a key, not just to freeing us, but also to understanding the connection between your world and ours." Sheriff Hayes, who had remained silent during the aftermath, finally spoke up. He leaned heavily on his revolver-handled cane, wiping sweat from his brow. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "Guess all those stories about lost cities weren't just fairy tales after all." Clara turned to him, a small smile forming on her lips despite the exhaustion etched across her face. "I guess not, Sheriff. But what happens now? Do we just go back?" Elara nodded thoughtfully. "For now, yes. The people of this city will begin rebuilding their lives outside the canyon. With the curse broken, they are free to leave. But you, Clara, have a choice to make." "A choice?" Clara echoed, her heart skipping a beat. "What kind of choice?" "You can return to Blackwater Gulch and resume the life you left behind," Elara explained. "Or you can stay here and learn more about the legacy of your ancestors, the true extent of the power within you. Either path carries its own challenges, but only one will allow you to fully embrace your destiny." Clara stared at the ground, her mind racing. Stay or go. Both options pulled at her heartstrings. On one hand, there was Blackwater Gulch, her home, her family, what little remained, and the simple life she knew. On the other hand, there was this place, brimming with mystery and potential, where she could uncover truths long buried, and perhaps even find answers about herself and her lineage. Old Sam nickered softly beside her, his presence grounding her in the moment. She reached out to pat his neck, drawing strength from his steady gaze. Then, turning back to Elara, she asked, "If I choose to stay, what would that mean for me and for everyone else?" "Staying means dedicating yourself to protecting the balance between worlds," Elara replied. "It means learning how to wield the power of the artifact responsibly and ensuring that neither world succumbs to forces beyond comprehension. You'd become a guardian not just of the city, but of the bond between our realms." "And if I choose to leave?" Clara pressed, though she already suspected the answer. "Leaving means returning to your old life," Elara said gently. "But it also means leaving much unresolved. The artifact will remain dormant until another rises to take your place. And while peace may reign temporarily, the cycle of curses and conflicts could eventually resurface without someone to maintain the equilibrium." Clara chewed her lip, torn between her desire for normalcy and the call of adventure stirring deep within her. She glanced at Sheriff Hayes, hoping for some guidance, but he merely shrugged. "Your call, kid," he said gruffly. "Just don't expect me to tag along next time. One cursed canyon is enough for any man." A faint chuckle escaped Clara's throat, and she appreciated the sheriff's attempt to lighten the mood. Still, the decision weighed heavily on her shoulders. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "I need time to think," she admitted. "Can I have that?" Elara smiled knowingly. "Of course. Take as long as you need. In the meantime, let me show you something." With a wave of her hand, The walls of the cavern began to shift again, revealing a hidden passage that led deeper into the earth. As they walked through the tunnel, Clara noticed carvings etched into the stone walls, scenes depicting battles, ceremonies, and figures that bore striking resemblance to her own face. "These are records of your ancestors," Ilara explained. "They were leaders, protectors, and keepers of knowledge. Their blood runs in your veins. Clara, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, their legacy lives on through you." Clara ran her fingers lightly over the carvings, marveling at the detail and craftsmanship. Each image told a story, a tale of triumphs and tribulations, of sacrifices made and victories won. For the first time, she truly understood the magnitude of her heritage. When they emerged from the tunnel, they found themselves standing atop a cliff overlooking the canyon. Below them stretched the Golden City, now bathed in the soft light of dawn. People moved about freely, their laughter and chatter rising like music on the morning breeze. Beyond the city lay rolling plains dotted with wildflowers, a stark contrast to the desolate wasteland Clara had known before. "This is what freedom looks like," Ilara said quietly. "Imagine giving that gift to others, to your town, to future generations. That is the power you hold." Clara gazed out the landscape, her heart swelling with conflicting emotions. Part of her yearned to dive headfirst into this new world, to explore every corner of it and unlock its secrets. Another part clung stubbornly to the familiarity of her past, unwilling to let go completely. Back at the campsite where they had begun their journey, Clara sat alone under the starlit sky, old Sam resting nearby. The golden box rested in her lap, its surface reflecting the faint glow of the moonlight. She opened it carefully, revealing a single crystal embedded within. It pulsed faintly, almost as if it were alive. "What do you think, boy?" she murmured to old Sam. "Should I stay or should I go?" The horse snorted softly, shaking his mane as if offering his opinion. Clara laughed despite herself, finding comfort in his unwavering loyalty. In the distance, she heard footsteps approaching. Turning, she saw Sheriff Hayes making his way toward her, his hat pulled low over his eyes. He stopped a few feet away, leaning casually against his cane. "You gonna sit there all night pondering the universe?" he teased. "Or are you gonna make a decision?" Clara sighed. "It's not easy, Sheriff. Either way, I feel like I'm losing something important." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that caught her off guard. "Life's full of trade-offs, kid. You can't have everything. But sometimes, taking a leap of faith pays off in ways you never expected." She frowned. "That's awfully philosophical coming from you." "Hey, I've been around long enough to know a thing or two." He shot back with a grin. "Besides, maybe I see a bit of myself in you. Stubborn, reckless, but with a good heart underneath it all." Clara chuckled softly, touched by his rare display of sentimentality. "Thanks, Sheriff." He tipped his hat slightly. "Anytime, kid. Now, whatever you decide, just remember, courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared out of your wits." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Clara alone once more with her thoughts. As she stared at the crystal in her hands, a strange calm settled over her. Perhaps the answer wasn't as complicated as she'd thought. Finally, she closed the box and stood, determination lighting her eyes. Whatever path she chose, she would face it head-on, with courage and resolve guiding her steps. And whether in the canyon or in Blackwater Gulch, she knew one thing for certain. Her story was far from over.